Hi, and welcome to Chapter 4 of CIS215. Chapter 4 is kind of a neat chapter in that it focuses on how we can take a website and make it work for all the different browsers. As we're going to see, each one of the browsers does have a different look and feel to it. There's a little bit difference between them. So the first thing this chapter gets into is we've got this browser page. And so if we take a look at this browser page, I'm using Chrome right here. So there's what it looks like in Chrome. You notice we got some shadowing of the text. We have the background as kind of a gradient. We do have a nice border. We've got some text in there. Well, if we take a look and see what it looks like in this is Safari. Safari pretty much looks the same. Now what I want you to kind of pay close attention to is the different verbiage here. If I go back to Chrome, we're going to notice that maybe some of these lines might get pushed off into another column as opposed to, now notice there's a difference in the font. Notice this font is a little more lighter. Over here it's a little more darker, a little tighter. So again, a little different there. If we go to Firefox, that's what it looks like. If we go to Internet Explorer, that's what it looks like. Wow, look at that. It basically puts it in paragraphs. If we take a look, see what it looks like in Edge, it basically puts it back in columns. So there is Internet Explorer. Now the great thing about Internet Explorer is you can hit F12 and it brings up this nice little bar down here, and down lower right here it says 11. You can actually change the version of this. I can go to 10 and see what it looks like in 10. Now notice in 10 we lose the border. Okay, it goes from the nice border of the picture to just a black border. So what's going on there is we basically do not have that feature in that version. And if I go to 10 or 9, I want you to pay close attention to the shadowing up there. If I go over here to version 9, notice that that goes away. And I can go down to version 8. It changes a little bit there as well. So we can actually change and test this in all of the different versions that are out there. Notice we actually lose the coloring, the gradient coloring, when we go to version 5. So go back up to 11 and we get everything back. So kind of nice. We basically really have a way to test every browser. In this particular browser we can actually test the versions as well. So it kind of shows you this is what it looks like in Explorer 9, and again everything we just looked at is basically being shown there. Except here's Opera. There's another browser called Opera. Notice that we lose our columns in Opera as well. So columns we don't have them in IE9. We don't have any border images in it or any gradients. We do have shadows. Safari, I don't know what the P means. The browser does support this feature, but it needs a custom CSS. So Safari 6, we can do columns, but we need to make sure we have a CSS present to do that. We can have borders, and the rest of the gradients are all there, except you have to have a cascading style sheet property in order to make them work. So you can kind of take a look at that table at your leisure. So if we were to take a look at the page source, we can see that we are using this cascading style sheet, and notice I've got a div tag up here where it says content, and down here is probably the ending div tag for that. I don't see any other div tags, but we do have some p tags in there. So if we take a look at I'm going to take a look at the code for this. I'm going to take a look at this style.css and see what that basically gets us. So we can see in there that we have this content. Now we have a pound sign. That means it's an ID tag. And we've got some padding, and we've got MOZ column. Now we'll see what these are here in a little bit. They'll stand for something. It's called a WebKit. and here's another one, and basically goes on from there. And we got some background, and we basically tell it a lot of different things. Here's some more WebKits as well. So if you see a dash something dash, that's a WebKit. We'll talk that in a lot more detail. So a whole lot of stuff going on here. So we basically are telling it how to do the gradient, we're telling it how to put the borders, we're telling it how to do the columns. Okay, how do you want the column counts to happen? So instead of paragraphs, different paragraphs, we're going to do columns this way for each paragraph, and that's basically what we're telling it to do here. Notice up here I've got an H1 text shadow. I'm telling it to shadow the text a certain way. Okay, so so kind of an introduction to how this guy works. Let me get back to the book. So again, they're talking about all the different things kind of going on there. Now color is another one that we have to really deal with when we're developing web pages. And it says we perceive color around us thanks to our eyes, obviously. And so if we take a look at this guy, so this guy is basically, it's kind of a blown up picture. We can see how it is pixelized and how we basically kind of see the true gradients of the different colors. If we were to shrink this guy down, I can shrink it down. So if I really shrink it down, you really don't see the gradients. And when I really make it big, whoop, went too big, we can see that it really is pixelized. We can actually see the little square blocks on everything. And so if I go back down to 100%, we can see that's basically the original size of the picture. So we have to really deal with the pixelization. Now the problem with pixelization is if the more pixels we have, the bigger that picture is. That means that's going to have a lot more file size is going to be a lot bigger. So I want to open this up in a smartphone and I'm on a data plan. Well, guess what? That's a lot more data that has to be downloaded. So how do we make this? So again, here's some comparisons here. This is a Verizon, so it's probably some smartphone. And we're looking at this guy and notice the colors aren't real deep and rich and red there. But when we get down here to it looks like this is a Macintosh, color's a little more deep, things are basically looks a little more colorful, things basically work. So the WC3, again, that's the folks who kind of set all the standards for internet web pages, has recommended a standard visual angle pixel size that hardware and software manufacturers can refer to while developing their product. So basically they've kind of come up with a standardized set of rules that kind of goes across the board that fits everything. So so here's the type, and it's derived from and used by reference pixels, a CSS pixel, where it's derived from and how it's used, and it basically goes on from there. So the CSS pixel is an absolute length unit that is anchored to the reference pixel. So that dot is a reference pixel and it's there somewhere, but realize it is bigger to take up less space, so we don't have that gradient look and feel sometimes. Another thing we have to worry about is this thing called accessibility. We have folks who have disabilities who want to use our web page. Guess what? Well, if we look at this, on the left is a picture how a normal sighted person sees that picture. On the right, on the other hand, is how a colorblind person would see that picture. So guess what? We have to be very careful when we want to make a web page that appeals to everyone. Well, guess what? Folks who are colorblind are going to see that completely different than anyone else. So what we can do is we can use some different processes to basically utilize these features, I should say, to basically programs to see how our page looks to colorblind folks. Now this viz check is basically for Photoshop, which we don't have access to, so we're going to look at something else. If you go out to the course in Jewel and go to the Chapter 4 stuff, there is this thing called Check Your Website for Color Blindness. So if you click on that, it takes us to this thing called the Color Oracle. And what you can do is you can actually download this guy and install it. And what it will do is when you have your particular web page open, you can click over here in your little triangle and you've got this little color wheel. And you can actually click on that to see how this guy looks in colorblind mode. So I'm going to open up this page right here and I'm going to click on the little color wheel. And I'm going to click on this one that says common. This is the commonmost. So that's what it would look like. Notice the red's now turned green. And notice this blue kind of becomes a purplish color. So things look a lot different. And if I click on it again and click on one, this is a rare type. And we kind of get the same look and feel. But that's kind of what it would look like to a colorblind person. And again, if I even look at one more, this is the very rare, looks like we still, the red is still kind of a red tint, but it kind of looks washed out and things don't look the same there either. So again, a great way to basically be able to see if our web page is able to be seen by colorblind folks. Very important to make sure we have that there for us. There's also another contrast analyzer. This is a nice one because you can go to this site and put your website in there, or you download it, run it, and it will tell you whether its contrast is too high or too low. Because there's folks who basically really have a hard time seeing things because, like, especially gradient. We really can't have gradient for those folks because sometimes their eyes only see like 3 different shades of one color, and gradient basically uses thousands of different shades, so it's really hard for those folks. So you can actually have your page analyzed to see if that particular item, the contrast or brightness is too high or too low. Okay, so we get back to the book. Okay, this next section, let's just go ahead and stop this recording here because I can only record 15 minutes at a time. We'll stop here and then come back and pick up with Google Analytics. Google Analytics is a really cool process that allows us to take and really truly analyze how the users are coming and utilizing our website.